Our first speakers are Sara Annah Matt Wiat.
The name sounds so much better when you say it.
Here. They are traveling from US. They have been making a tour with Bob Chapman these days. They really believe that inspiration is playing a key role in business. Matt comes from serving the country, the nation. Sara comes from serving people. They are building cultures that are sustainable. And they believe that inspiration, fulfillment, and a redefining of leadership needs to be done. So I can introduce them with these three words. We will be using this way of introducing the people that are here for the rest of the speakers. They are the first speakers. We will have 6 speakers, I said, and we will go through questions at the end of these 5 rounds, where they will be around 10 minutes each. So thank you, Sara and Matt.
Great. In a little bit, our CEO, Bob Chapman, is going to join us. And I promise I'm not ruining the end of his talk. It's not a spoiler, but he's going to stand up here and he's going to talk a lot about how you should care for your team, that your role as a leader is to inspire people. And he will say, well, nobody ever disagrees with me, which is like, well, Bob, like, of course somebody's going to disagree with the idea that we should care for people, but the how-to often is a little bit trickier. Monday morning at 8 a.m., from a leadership standpoint, how do I actually inspire? So Matt and I are going to provide for you an interactive activity that we're going to do. The reason we're providing it for you is so that you can go back and do it with your team, and we're going to provide some questions that you can assess the current environment that you're in. So when we talk about this idea of inspiration, we prefer to start with the literal definition. If you think about the word itself, it means to fill somebody with the urge or ability to do or feel something, from the Latin to breathe life into. If I want my team to be inspired, it means that I want them to go off and do great things. If you walk out of here today and you think any of us are good speakers, it could be Matt or I or Bob or any of the people who are going to follow us, perhaps it's just charisma and some good slide design. If you leave inspired, it means that you actually leave thinking about yourselves and what perhaps you could do differently. To make this very specific to you all, I'm going to ask you to think of a single word that inspires you. One single word that inspires you. When you have it, I want you to think of a very short example in your life, personal or professional, that would explain why you chose that word. One single word that inspires you, and an example of why that word is important. I want you to turn to the person sitting next to you. We all like to sit with people that we know, but perhaps you're sitting next to somebody that you don't know and you're about to make a new friend. And you're going to share the word. We're going to do this in 1 minute. You're going to share the word, and you're going to share your very brief example. Over to you all. Okay, I'm going to bring you out of that conversation, and if you wouldn't mind pulling out your smartphone, smart device, and going to the website that hopefully you walked into, if you checked in up at the front, menti.com, menti.com, and put in the code that you see at the top, 925551, and enter the word that inspires you. If you have trouble, I know some people do not have data service down here, you can shout out your word, and our talented team will put it in. If you absolutely cannot get to the website, let us know your word, and we'll put it in for you. Honesty, Susan.
Metamorphosis.
Oh, metamorphosis? All right, Mike, you're up. Freedom, Susan.
Travel.
Truth, Mike.
What's this one back here?
Travel.
Travel?
Yes.
Travel for Susan?
Love.
Love, Mike. Inspiration, Susan.
Community.
Community. Susan. Transformation. Passion.
Those of you who are able to get on your phone, you can ask your neighbor to help you. You can put in more than one answer. Just put your neighbor's. And we already turned the profanity filter on, so you guys are not going to see your word.
Anyone else need their word entered? Celebration, Mike.
Happiness.
Happiness, Susan.
Any words that can put in over here?
Good. All right, if you see these come in, love, people, courage, creation, focus, culture, caring, team, improvement, heart change, you cheated, put in 2 words, I see you, friendship, connected, discovery, innovation, integrity. If more people put in a word, that's why it's showing up bigger, just means multiple people know that same word.
Ja, stuk was is das?
Autonomy. Okay.
We should ask one of our team members.
Oh, you really should have made them do that. I like it. What do you all observe as the commonality to the word cloud that we just built? What are all these words have in common?
Humanity.
Community. We didn't hear all of your examples, but we're going to go way out on a limb and guess. You probably told stories about people. There's not a lot of us who say, you know, I triumphed alone. Let me tell you a story about how me, myself, did everything. All of these ideas have to do with people and human connectedness. What's missing? What's not up here? Numbers, metrics. This is essentially a business group. It's an HR-focused group. And yet we certainly don't see profit. We don't see shareholder value. This isn't even the funny part. You guys are a great audience. Occasionally,
This is HR. You didn't see, I don't know, compliance or rules, laws, work councils.
occasionally we will see the word money. Somebody will put it in. And if you go and you ask what's the example or what's the story, they'll start with something that sounds like, well, I didn't have any growing up. And so I will not allow my family to want for anything. It's not the money, but it's what the money provides for the people that you care the most about. When we do this activity, we have been on a little bit of a European tour, so we've done it a lot this particular week. But we've also done it really around the world. Probably 100,000 people have done this activity. And their word cloud looks like yours, not necessarily the word I can't pronounce, but mostly it looks like the words that you put in. And so when we talk about what are the things that inspire us, what inspires you are the same things that inspire the people in your span of care. If we do this with students, it inspires them. If we do it with seasoned executives, same word cloud. So when we get into this debate that perhaps generations or cultures desire something different. When it comes to inspiration, there's quite a lot of commonality. And we think that perhaps this is just kind of soft and fluffy and nice, and it's a fun thing to see the words come in. We've done a little bit of work with the gentleman who wrote the book How, Doug Seidman. And he looks at organizations and says, if you have an inspired population of people, what's the actual outcome? And so through his research and study, he found that if I'm inspired as a team member, I show up as authentically dedicated. I'm proud of the organization and for what it stands for. I'm deeply accountable. I want to seize authority. And I'm fully responsible. I lean in and I stretch myself. And in fact, inspiration is 27% more predictive of performance than engagement. So while a lot of HR professionals really want to measure engagement, it's actually inspiration that can link the people in your business to whatever the business wants to accomplish. And we know a lot of this work happens in teams.
And so in teams, Sara mentions a lot of the work is done in teams. Essentially, the leader's job, the leader's role, is to build, to nurture, to rebuild, to motivate, to inspire teams. So they do. So Google was trying to figure out, all of our work is done in teams, people that need each other to get work done. They were trying to figure out, why is it that some of our teams are highly effective and some teams are not? And by defining effective, they said teams that hit their marks for quality. In other words, it's built to the standards that Google wanted it built to. It was built in the timeline, it met the metrics for cost, all of those things. The team members were engaged, they had low turnover scores. All of those things were defined as effective. And not all of their teams were. The reason this was vexing Google was they thought, well, we pay top of the market, we hire some of the top talent in the world, and people actually believe in the work that we're doing. I'm not here advocating for Google. I'm not saying they're a good or a bad company. I'm just simply saying they're a company that gets some top talent, people believe in that work, and they pay them very, very well. So why is it some of the teams are doing really well, and some teams were not? What they found is that from teams, when we talk about people that are highly interdependent, it's important to define what a team is before we get into this. A work group is when people just simply get together and they share information. So if I'm engineering, if I'm sales, if I'm IT, I'm not needing one another to get work done. I'm just here updating you on perhaps what's going on in my area of the business. Teams are highly interdependent and they have to work together. I'm showing you a picture here of the Apollo space program to put a person on the moon. You may take a guess how many people were on the team. NASA estimated how many people had to come together to be on a team to put Neil Armstrong on the moon. Any guesses what that number was? How many? 50, 400. Any other guesses?
400,000.
400,000, that's exactly right. You read the article. 400,000. This is free for you tonight. 400,000 people. The reason I bring this up is Google found there were some things that they thought was going to be a determinant of effective teams, and it actually wasn't. One of them was team size. The other one was co-location. In other words, people actually physically had to be working together. Pay, benefits, average IQ of the team, or even having a superstar with a high IQ on the team wasn't actually a determining factor. The conclusion they came to was what mattered more was how the team worked together and not who was on the team. They named it Project Aristotle from Aristotle's quote, "The whole is greater than the sum of its parts." And again, this is their conclusion that they found, which is really fascinating because they thought, well, gosh, we really put a lot of time in recruiting the right people. Now, based on this effective teamwork, Project Aristotle, they needed to look at how are we training these people to work better together. Because clearly just hiring a collection of smart people doesn't make a team, nor does bringing together a collection of highly athletic people make a successful team right away. They found 5 factors to determine what an effective team was. They are as follows. The number 1 was psychological safety. Team members feel okay to take a risk in front of each other or be vulnerable. And I don't mean vulnerable like we're all sad and crying. I mean vulnerable as in we're willing to say I need help. We're willing to say I don't know. And I'm willing to accept help. Psychological safety. Number 2 is dependability. In other words, can I actually do the job? Am I competent to do this work? Number 3 was structure. Do I understand in clarity? Do I understand what my role is and what the role of each other person is? The last 2, I know there's a whole bunch written on, starting with why and purpose and meaning and impact in the world. It's not that they're not important. It's just that they made number 4 and number 5. Meaning was found out that it wasn't just meaning as in I want to make the world a better place or I want to fight climate change. It was this work is meaning personally to me, to the individual. For some people that might be my work being meaningful is that I'm fighting against climate change. I want to protect the planet for the future generation. For some people it was I just want to protect my family and I want to have an income. It has to be personally meaning to the individual. The last one is impact, and that's defined as the work that I'm doing inside the organization. I see that it creates change for the organization. In other words, the amount of effort that I put into the system, I get an equal and or greater amount of work, of accomplishment out of it. Really quick off script here, real fast. This is Gabriel, and this is Brianna. Where's Brianna? Over here. So these two, I'll give you an example of a highly effective team. These two are from Senegal, and 5 years ago they started a student-led conference called Ignite. I don't know what it was about, but it had a really great website. They called us up, we were talking to them. When I think about watching that student group, and it's in its 5th year, so we'll run again this October, has 15 team members, new president. Gabriel and Brown are completely out of it now. But when I think about that team, they were okay to take risks in front of each other, right? They knew exactly what they were doing. Well, to some degree, they knew what they were doing. They had structure, and it's not that these things weren't confusing. It's not that everything worked out. It's not that effective teams don't disagree or go through some phases. When I think about an effective team, it's an event that still runs today, at Senegal, in the 5th year following all the speakers that have ended up being there. That's an example of a highly effective team. You can give them a round of applause if you'd like. 2 ways we can look at this. So Sara mentioned we want to give you some tools to take this back to your team. There's 2 quick diagnostics. One is this. How can I tell that whether site safety exists or doesn't? I'm looking for the behaviors of people. So in this case, I'm looking for someone to say, literally, I don't know. Even if I'm supposed to, and I am a subject matter expert that is supposed to have the answer, I'm going to be okay in a group to say, you know what, this time I actually don't know, and I need some help. Because there's some kind of nuance, there's something different with the equation that's throwing me off. I'm saying dependability, deadlines are met within standards, or you're meeting the deadlines, but you need a hero. You need someone that comes in at the last minute and saves the day.
We've all seen that.
What's that?
We've all seen that.
Yes, because you're the hero, aren't you?
No.
Oh, come on. Yes, exactly, right? Structure. Do I know what my job requirements are? And this might be, I don't know if this is the right saying, but meetings after the meeting. In other words, there's a meeting that happens, and then everyone goes and then says, what happened? What was said? Everybody has their own side meetings. Because I don't know who's doing what, and so structure and clarity is a huge determiner of effective team. The last 2 meaning, I understand the actions, I relate back to them, and progress toward the goal can be quantified. I need to know that I'm making progress. There's some biological chemicals that happen and why we're motivated for that, but if we were running a marathon, I don't know how much it is in kilometers, but a marathon is 26.2 miles. How many? 42. It sounds much better when you do it in miles, doesn't it? 42 kilometers I gotta run. I want some mile markers along the way to tell me that I'm making progress. I need that in my job as well. This is a diagnostic. We built a survey. The survey handles these 3 areas. It's an online diagnostic for organizations. So we're trying to measure culture, and we're trying to measure effective teams. The 3 areas you see there are people, the interaction between people, that's the behavior portion of it, that's the psychological safety. The second one you see there is into the purpose. I want to know about meaning and impact and how individuals are relating to that. And the last one, importantly for us, is the process. How is the work structured? How is it aligned? Because I want to know about structure and clarity as well. It's not just to test for Google's Project Aristotle, but we built a survey that tests for culture. The effective team of Project Aristotle is one part of that. The last tool I'll give you is what you can take back to your own teams. These are questions directly from our survey. You can ask them to your team or to an employer, to an organization. You can see the questions you would ask as it relates back to what category. So for site safety, I want to know that a direct leader or my leader cares about me as a person. Before I'm an engineer, I'm an accountant, before I'm in sales, before I'm IT, my name, who I am, what drives me. I want to know, does he care about me or she care about me? Dependability, I can get what I need from other people. You see structure, I have a way to remove frustration. So when Sara led you through the inspired word activity, and she mentioned all of you talked about people serving people. Asking someone what frustrates you in your role, I don't want to know about what your efficiencies are or how much waste the process is. I want to know what frustrates you. I want the human aspect of this. And then I want to go after and solve that. And then I do get more efficient and less waste. The last two, the work here makes a difference in the lives of other people. And the final one there, my work contributes to the success of this organization. For those of you that might be looking for a new job, or perhaps you're a student, these are the questions you ask a prospective employer. When the employer says, do you have any questions about the job or the organization? You hit them with these. All right? Sarah, what else am I missing? That's our time around here. Thank you.